but none of this should be construed as it's specific advice. This is meant to be, educational and a discussion. Hopefully, you find these helpful. Why we're here is, bottom line for most of us, financial literacy is not something that's taught in school and typically not at home, unfortunately. And so, but this is important because many of us start taking charge of our financial futures way too late and miss out on the most important early years where you get that compounding, which is so instrumental. And this, and ultimately, what I like you to be able to do once we've completed this is, that you feel confident to take steps, maybe that you haven't already, to start improving your financial situation today, leading towards financial freedom and independence. As started these, that I don't know everything, obviously, but here's just a list of some of the many mistakes I've made, with money over the years. But what I've tried to do is I have learned a lot and done a lot of self-study, and so hopefully I can help you guys get on the right path even faster, and you don't make the same mistakes that I did, or you can quickly recover from those. And if anybody wants to go into some of those specific, but like I said, I have a lot still to learn, but they're people seem to find these helpful. It's going to be two quick polls. Some of you have already taken some of these, but they should be pretty quick. These aren't rhetorical. It's really just a couple to get a little background, and then some is what I call them the wealth building questions, to see what kind of preconceptions you've had, and then it also goes into on the second poll the big five literacy questions that they've used internationally, and just get a feel for what makes sense, or what people don't know. So. Okay, good. The first question is, do you contribute at least 10%? Because for Viasat, that's what we need as a minimum to get the max 5% match. And good, this is great. Everybody contributes at least 10%, and 2 out of 8 contribute the maximum, which, by the way, I put in the 2023 limits. That goes up by 2,000 to 22,500, and then an additional 1,000 to a total of 7,500 for catch-up contributions for people the year they turn 50 and over. Let's see, number 2. If you don't max the 401k, have you set up auto increase? And that's good. 5 out of 8 already have. That's something I recommend you do. Probably everybody just got a raise, and so don't blow all that raise. Put some of it away. So, and you can easily do that. Just adding another percentage on the auto increase, will get you. You'll be happy later, and you won't notice the difference now. Let's see. Okay, on the IRA, good. What's an IRA? Okay, an IRA is an individual retirement account, and the third discussion I go into really delves deep into all the different retirement accounts, but it's an individual retirement account that you have to set up on your own. I recommend the Fidelity, Schwab, or Vanguard. Those are the 3 discount brokers that are great for establishing your own individual retirement account, and you can and should contribute to this and to the 401k. Once you max out the match for the 401k, I think you then max out the funding for the Roth IRA, not my favorite, before you go back and increase your 401k, because there's just more options and there's a lot of flexibility, beauties of especially with the Roth, in my opinion. And most people probably make too much with a 401k to be able to do it due to a deductible traditional IRA contribution. Let's see. Okay. Anybody? And at the end, if that didn't make sense, if we want to go and delve into more on IRAs, let me know. And we can keep questions here or on the Slack channel. Let's see. Do you max fund your IRA annually? Only 3 out of 8 said they do. Okay, that's unfortunate. Like I said, once you get the 10% in the 401k, my next dollars are going to the Roth IRA and or to the HSA. Those are to me the next best things, and then you go back and fill up the 401k till you can max that out as well. But we can go into reasons for that, but I do have my hierarchy of saving and investing in these slides later. 5. What percentage of Americans could cover? Okay, this one's always so it's actually what percentage of could actually cover is 40%. So it seems crazy, don't you think, that 60% of people cannot come up with $1,000 if they needed it? But that's what we have in our consumer society, and people not saving for emergencies. It's this year it's actually at 56%. Normally it's 60, so it's a little bit better this year, but it's still right around always 60% that can't come up uh, cannot come up with $1,000 in case of an emergency. Okay, what percent of millionaires are self-made? I think people have seen this one before now. This one was, to me, it's 5 out of 8. 80% is correct, and that's historically correct. Even since 1892, 84% of millionaires were self-made. So that's consistent, and I think to me, it was a big surprise because, like, I grew up, you know, kind of a poor background. It was like my parents thought that the only way to get rich was coming from wealth, and that's not true. 80% don't come from any wealth at all, and it's all self-made. So I think that's very encouraging should be very encouraging for all of us. 7. What is the median household income of a salary? This one's kind of surprising. Granted, this is back a little bit old, but wages weren't increasing very much for many years anyway, but it's 89K, 89,000, let's see, 178 was the average family, the median household income. So if two parents, both were working, that was the total. It seems strikingly low, but that just shows what, by saving and investing early, what that can do for you. And it also probably tells us, wow, I'm spending way too much money for many of us. But what's amazing is that's the median. So half of the people were making even less than that when they became a millionaire. I think that's probably pretty humbling for many of us. Okay, on average, how long did it take millionaires to build their first million? Most people said 10 years. Actually, it's 28 years. This is the thing, and this is our um, we are, especially American attitude of wanting everything right away. Nope, building wealth is a slow, gradual process. And when you think about it, this makes sense. 28 years, people start working, and they slowly start contributing to their 401k, et cetera. And then over time, that just starts compounding. And then it goes into the next question, which is what is the average age, which this 3 out of 8 got it right. It's 49. So think about people graduating from college, say 21, 20, 20, say 21, 22, add 28, that's about 40, 49 years old, right on, when people become a millionaire. So if you're young and you're expecting to make $1 million in 10 years, that's likely not going to happen. But if it does, great. And I think it can happen sooner now with people. It's a golden age of investing where fees have dropped and knowledge is getting more out there. And then let's see, what percentage of millionaires graduated from college? Actually, this is kind of a surprise. 90% actually did with a bachelor's degree. And we'll stop here. Okay, and there's the answers as well. You can see hopefully in the background. Okay, what percent attended elite prestigious schools? Let's see, most said about 10%. That's correct. It's about actually 8%, is what, and so the majority didn't. That's the point. You don't have to spend a lot of money on education and go into significant student loan debt, become a millionaire. What percentage attended state public state schools? Most said 80%. It's actually 62%, so 60% is about right, but it's still a majority. Majority just went to state school, affordable, got their degree, and started making money and saving and investing. What percentage of millionaires said single stock investing was a significant factor in their financial success? We're split there, mostly half said less than 1%, half said 20 to 30%. It's actually nobody has. People have, but in the reports of the 10,000 study, they not a single one mentioned single stock investing. It was all mostly they just used funds in their 401k, et cetera. And so that's my point. There is people like, oh, I want to like, let me buy Tesla. It's shooting the moon. That's not where you're going to make your money in general. And single businesses fail, but the index funds, they're self-cleansing. That's the way to go. You're not going to, you don't know, you're not smarter than the rest. So um, you can gamble with a little 5%, in my opinion, but otherwise just keep them in, broad-based, low-cost index funds, and you'll be happy and do better than you would have otherwise. Okay, let's see. Now going into this question, $100 in the savings account, 2% per year. How much would you have in the account after 5 years? And yep, majority said more than 102, which is the correct answer. Um, uh, it's just it obviously a little bit of math there, but these are the big 5 financial literacy questions. And by the way, like less than a third of the U.S. got 4 out of 5 of these correct. So don't feel like you should know all these, but it's just an interesting. Imagine that the interest rate on your savings account was 1% and inflation was 2%. Yep, everybody got this about right. How much would you be able to buy with the money on this account? Less than today. That's inflation. We're all seeing that much more significantly this year than we've probably ever seen in our life. Let's see. Next question. If interest rates rise, what typically happens to bond prices? Um, this is the one. It's so the kind of split. They said they will rise, and 4 said they will fall, and 1 said they would stay the same. Don't know. Another 2. They actually will fall. So there's this teeter-totter effect to interest rates and bond prices, and that's why this year people have kind of been like, "What the heck? Everything's going down." Stocks went down with the bear market, and bonds got crushed because interest rates went way up. And so, and it's teeter-totter effect. When bond interest rates go up, bond prices fall. And the reason for that is, let's say you had a bond for 1%, and then Fed raises interest rates, and now you can get a bond for 5%. Well, is anybody going to buy your bond that hasn't matured yet, that's at 1%? No. Thus, you're going to have to discount that. You're going to have to drop the price for somebody to even buy it. Does that make sense? Hopefully that kind of gets sense, because everybody would much rather have the 5% bond now. So anyway, that's why bonds have gotten crushed this year, because the Fed has increased interest rates, which we needed to, but that's why they've dropped. So and hopefully for people that are older, this is actually good for fixed income, because you will get some yield out of bonds now. Whereas for many years it was pretty much nothing since 2008 about. Okay, question 7. Most everybody said that 15-year mortgage typically requires higher monthly payments, but total interest paid will be less. That is true. But I'm a fan of 30-year mortgage myself. And then if you want to pay it down in 15 years, great. There's a little difference in interest rate, but it provides flexibility because that 15-year mortgage payment can be so high that I prefer the flexibility of 30 and just overpay if you want on the principal. Okay, you can still pay it off in 15 years. Buying a single stock, exactly. Yep, that's false. A single stock is not safer than a stock mutual fund in general. Like I said, I like the index fund. They're self-cleansing. Companies go out of business all the time, but the index fund the S&P 500. New companies come in, fill it up. Old companies that fall away leave. So any questions there on the polls, or anybody have any thoughts of what was kind of maybe surprising to you? This is more of a rhetorical question just for you. What do you value, and what do you want to spend lavishly on, and other areas where do you cut? Because you can't afford everything, but you can afford plenty, so long as you decide what's important for you, into building your best rich life. Here's the agenda. What we'll cover today: secret to wealth, part 1, and then next time we'll go over part 2, secret to true wealth. It is simple, but it's not easy. Because it takes dedication and consistency. Deferred gratification. This is it. Spend less than you make, invest this surplus wisely, avoid significant debt, and you will be wealthy. It's pretty simple. Um, but the problem is each one of those is a challenge. How do you spend less than you make? Especially in this, California environment where it's so expensive in general. How do you invest the surplus wisely? What is smart investing? And avoiding significant debt, whether it's cars, credit cards early on for people, or buying too much house, which is often the challenge for us in California because it's so expensive here. Has anybody heard of the Stanford marshmallow experiment?
No.
No.
Yeah.
Yes. What is? Do you know what you want to elaborate on what that is?
I think it's when you have a group of people and you give them a marshmallow and a bunch of spaghetti sticks, and they have to work as a team to build the high structure.
Actually, that's a teamwork thing,
Oh,
which they've shown that 5-year-olds. That's another
do
experiment, and
better
the
than
5-year-olds do better than a whole group of MBAs. They consistently, and it's so cool. But the Stanford marshmallow experiment, what this was, they took little children, probably 4 years old or so, and they put them in a chair and they put a marshmallow in front of them and said, okay, if you don't eat this, I'm going to leave the room here. And if you don't eat this, and when I come back, it's still there, you'll get a second one. And then they'd go, and they're sitting there recording the children. They go behind the door, and then after what seemed like forever, probably a couple of minutes, they'd come back, and usually the kids, of course, just couldn't handle it and ate the marshmallow. But um, the people that did defer to gratification got the second marshmallow. Um, that's what they were testing. The fascinating thing about the experiment, though, is they followed these people for like 30 years. And the people that deferred gratification from that little marshmallow were in a much better state financially and another of various realms of I guess what you call metrics of life, in a sense. Um, and I think it's just fascinating, but it just shows the importance of deferred gratification. And that's what helps. That's what gets you to be a millionaire. Um, and the faster you can do that, the better. Does everybody know what their savings rate? And if for you guys, are you saving and investing towards retirement at least 20 to 25%?
Yes.
Good. How long does it take your money to double? And this is if you're not even contributing. Say you have 100,000 right now, and you've got a certain interest rate return you're getting. How long before that turns into 200,000? So obviously, if you're contributing, that'll be even faster. But it's a rule called the rule of 72. So basically, if you divide whatever a common thumb rule is, the market you can make about probably 8%. You'd think a year. So you divide 72 by 8%, and that tells you how long it'll take your money to double, which that would be 9 years to double your money. So every time, then another 9 years, double again, again, again. And that's why you want to start as soon as you can, because that last doubling is the most important, the one that gets you from, you know, a million to 2 million, 2 million to 4 million, 4 million to 8 million, whatever. That's what you want, and that's why the sooner you can start, the better. And when I say saving, like I said on the bottom, for retirement, think investing for retirement, because you're not saving money. You're never going to beat inflation. You need that money to grow. You need that in the market, or other investing vehicles. So, how much money do you need to retire? Some people this actually is true with military pension, but Social Security won't be enough for nearly everybody. Plus, that doesn't start at the earliest until 62, but I wouldn't recommend people start at 62 if possible. I'd delay it because you can make a lot more money. Um, Sue Thorman is like, oh, you need 5 to 10 million. And she tells everybody they have to work forever. That's ridiculous too. It's all, how do you know how much you need to retire until you're financially independent? Does anybody know? Have an idea how do you calculate your number, what you need to retire? Let everybody.
70% of your salary.
What percent?
70% of your salary.
Shama, that's a good thumb rule. There's actually I've heard 80% is a lot of times used as well. Um, and it really depends though, because what do you want to do in retirement? And what are your, it's really comes down to what are your expenses in retirement? Some things will go up, some things will go down. Travel likely goes up in retirement, at least early. Um, other fees like heck, COVID's kind of changed so many things, but normally people don't pay for dry cleaning, commuting costs, all these other things that they did previously. But medical will likely come up, you know, but it's a balance, but it's really determining what your expenses are. And 70-80% of what your income is, that's often a thumb rule that's used, but really what you need to figure out is what your expenses are. And that'll tell you how much you need to spend a year. And then there's a thumb rule that came up. Actually, Bill Bengen gave the 4% rule of thumb safe withdrawal rate, which that was based on 50% stocks, 50% treasury bills. You can actually diversify much better and have a better return. But he looked at all the various 30-year periods since the Great Depression or before that onward, and even at the worst time, you would be able, with a 4% safe withdrawal rate. So you had $1 million, you could take out 40%, 4%, 40,000 that first year, and then adjust it for inflation each year and not run out of money in a 30-year retirement. In reality, this was also done a little bit later by Trinity Study, came up with the same thing, and they had 96% success rate. And more often than not, actually, the money grew much larger, often over half the time, over doubled in money as well. The basically that 4% rule, if you invert it, so if you take what your annual expenses are and multiply that by 25, that's your pool that you need to meet that 4% safe withdrawal rate. That's a rule of thumb. It's not a law, but it's a good thing it's a good base, knowing 25 times your annual expense is a great thumb rule to have. But I wouldn't, distribute your money just based on using 4%. There's a lot better ways to do that. But that's really the challenge, is distribution over accumulation, in my opinion. FU money is typically thought of, FU is just what you think. But basically have enough money to where you could not work for a couple of years. If you had a caustic boss or a terrible work environment, or just taking a sabbatical, that's what everybody should be able to strive to have early on. Any questions here? And like I said, this comes into expenses. What do you really want in retirement? Do you want that golf membership at a country club? Hey, if that's important, then include that. Okay, spend less than you make. Budget. I don't like budgeting, but you have to do it. At least, getting an idea if you haven't ever before. And you need to look at least, 6 to 12 months that you can cover your big expenses. Only happen once a year, whether renter's insurance, auto insurance, auto registration, etc. Those ones that are much longer. I prefer pay yourself first. So get everything on automatic, and then you've already saved and invested, and then you can spend whatever's left. And then we'll go into a few more of these things. Budgeting. There's really, I'd say probably YNAB, you need a budget, is probably the best budgeting tool. Mint is more like, yeah, you can see where your money went, but it's more retro, kind of looking after the fact. And maybe so long as you track it and then take action on tracking it and saying, man, I'm spending too much eating out or whatever, that might work. But the best thing you can do is, if you have struggle with budgeting, is track every dollar for a night for 3 months if you can. And just by doing that, you'll see where your money's going, and you'll become much more conscious of it in general. Like I said, yep. Oh, I guess that was not meant to be. Like I said, I'm a big fan of pay yourself first. You got to make this automatic. That's what is going to make you rich, because we are humans are terrible investors, but we're emotional beings that we're geared for fight versus flight. And so when when we let our emotions get involved, we're just terrible investors. Actually, it's probably the best investors. They've shown in studies that dead people are better than others. They just leave it alone, and they do far better than us thinking we're smarter, or just letting our emotions, when the market dips or whatever, going to cash, those terrible things. Anybody have any questions?
I do.
Here?
I gotta,
Yep.
is there a specific percentage of that, you state that you want to use 70 to 80% as a baseline of how much you should be investing for your future. But when you say pay yourself first, especially when it comes to your savings, how do you have a, like, what is the percentage that we should aim at?
Well, I would say I'd say you want to ideally do at least 25%. If you that's you know especially now, because there's not pensions anymore, but I like 25% that you should be saving and investing. It in Maryland, it varies a little bit whether you use Roth or traditional as well, because Roth dollars it'll eat a little more out of your paycheck because you're paying taxes on it, but then you'll never pay taxes on that money later. So that's kind of a next level thing when we go into that. But so you'd have to actually almost have to put a haircut, I guess, on the traditional pre-tax. But I'd say like 25%. So you want your 401k, your IRA, your HSA, those, and or brokerage account. I personally would prefer 25%, and you will by quickly, if people start that at 25 years old, they could easily meet that 80% of their income by age 54. So now with the FIRE movement, the Financial Independence Retire Early movement, people often are looking at 50% or more. That's I'm not promoting that specifically, but it's a balance of living your best life now while also allowing for a wonderful retirement where you get to live how you want, and make that choice, retire early if you as you desire, which is hopefully what we all are able to do, is retire when we want, not being forced into it. Did that answer your question, Marilyn?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Anybody else?
Does the
Yep.
ESPP count as
Yes, it does.
okay?
I would say, because and Christian, here, when we get into the hierarchy of saving and investing, you can. So I'm a believer in not getting too much into the own company stock. You don't want
Yeah.
your livelihood but you can every 6 months you can sell that after you made the minimum 15%, and then use that to fund your IRA, your HSA, or whatever else. You know what I mean? That's in your brokerage account already. So but you're already taking it out of your paycheck. So don't go and then spend it, since you've already been living without it. Make sense?
Okay, yeah.
Okay. But yeah, so that counts. Absolutely. And to me, that's an important one for us that have that ability to have an employee stock purchase plan. Which is ESPP. Okay, the big thing too, and this is why and too many, I know I was the same way, and you see it's all my mistakes, but the most important thing is your investing rate, your percent you're putting away, not the return you're getting. And you can see I circled a couple things on here. And granted, I hope people are saving much more than 5%, but you see like 5% versus, here saving just 1% and getting a 10% return. Don't focus on doing your job great. Buy low cost index funds, and you will get the return that you want, but you won't waste your time. You're not that smart. You're not smarter than Warren Buffett. So just let the market work for you, and instead of trying to increase your return, increase your savings rate, and that's what's gonna be most effective. Especially when you're young. Think about it. You have $1,000. You make 10%, 15%. That's $150, whatever. Now, when you're talking later, so what you want to do is save more, so you get way more than 1,000 quickly pooled up, and then down the road, that return is going to be significant when you have a large amount of money. 15% or 8% on $1 million is now we're talking life changing. Okay, any questions here? Okay, back to kind of spending less than you make. Here's the big three on how to reduce spending. Housing, like I personally like on not spending more than spending less than 25% of gross income on your housing. And that includes all of it, in my opinion. Like if you can, principal, interest, property taxes, homeowners insurance, and HOA fees. I personally like to use, especially when I was in the military, had the housing allowance, my cable, cell phone, all that stuff I considered in that 25%. Granted, I don't use cable now, but we all have some subscription. Transportation, too many people spend way too much on cars, and I'm a big fan of buying a reliable car, running it till it dies. Run it, take care of it and have it forever, and then you're investing all that money instead of making car payments. I do like the 23/8 rule. This is the Money Guy show has explained this, which I like. It's a good thumb rule. You can put 20% down on the car, but you pay off the entire loan in 3 years, and the total of all car payments for your entire household, it's got to be less than 8% of your gross income. So if two people have cars, that the total amount of it's got to be less than 8%, and you should be investing more per month than what you're paying in a car payment. Any questions there? Right now, if you can not buy a car, great, because things are so expensive with inflation and have been for over a year. But if you can wait a few years, and then heck, in 3-4 years, imagine like how many electric cars are going to be out there. All the major industries, car makers are just, in that market now. And those are the ones, unlike, Tesla, who's, slow to manufacture and kind of expensive, although they're great cars. You're talking Ford, all these other car makers are going to have tons of electric cars in the market that are going to help bring the price down. And then lastly, food, of course. Probably, I bet that average American money dollar, this was from over a year ago, it's probably went up over 300, I'm sure, easily with the costs inflating. Any questions here? But these are the biggest things. House hacking, great way if you can, especially when you're young. Buying a multifamily, or splitting costs with somebody else, or having them pay for your mortgage is ideal. That's the biggest expense typically. Any other questions? And I know the housing is an issue here in California, but too many people, once you buy a home, what used to be hundreds of dollars are easily thousands of dollars you're spending outside of mortgage and principal. You spend a lot on your home, which people don't usually account for, whether it's repairs or just what have you, filling up every room. Okay, here's what I have seen as fundamental mistakes that ruin people's wealth building opportunities. Monthly car payments, as I said, I like the 23/8 rule, and then don't, think about if you don't have to have a car payment for 10 years. That's a long time, where you can be putting money away to set up your retirement. Constantly raising your standard of living. That's why we're doing this right now. Before, if people got raises going into the new year, we're about to start a new year. We've got increased 401k numbers, and even IRA finally went up. So start putting some more of that money away. Don't constantly raise your standard of living. You should be comfortable with a certain level, and then put away as much as you can so you can set your retirement and retire when you want to, and do whatever you want. not relying on a W-2 income. You can just work on whatever your passion is if that's not currently what you're doing. Credit cards. I'm a fan of using credit cards for points and stuff like that, but only if you pay off the balance every single month in full, on time and in full. But credit cards, the problem is, has anybody paid for cash? Paid cash for things in a while? If you have a problem with impulse spending, throw the, stash the credit card and just use cash for a month. It's amazing how much harder it is to buy stuff when you have to hand over your cash versus the card. It's amazing. Like, you actually really consider, like, wait, do I really want that? But I also like the 72-hour rule. You don't need something. You don't need that by Amazon tomorrow. Most things you really don't need. So give it a 72-hour rule. And if you still really think you want it, then okay, then consider it. Subscriptions, that's the new killer. Everything's a subscription now, but do you really need all of them? You need Spotify subscription, or you just listen to a few ads once in a while. I mean, there's just so many things that are on subscription. This is one that I recommend everybody check every 6 months, because you always get some, free offer for a while, and they count on you forgetting about that, and then they're sucking money out of you, whether it's $20 a month or whatever. But everybody take a look at your subscriptions, determine the monthly cost, and then cancel what you don't need. And that's something you should do every 6 months. Christian, I remember you did this, right? I think you saved like what, $150 a month or something like that a while back.
Yeah, something like that.
I mean, that's good.
I just did it actually, and I saved myself $125.
$125 a month. Think about that. That's significant. That's right now, I guess, if you're not funding your Roth IRA, that's probably the difference right there, potentially. So, anybody else have any other stories about subscriptions, or and how much money they saved? And you think about it, it's not
Hey,
small
Alan,
pennies. Yes.
not that subscription, but I have a story for the credit card.
Okay. Yep.
I was recently in Egypt, and our guide told us not to use the credit card most of the places, because they will hack it and use your credit card. So we had to use the local currency or the dollars, US dollars, to purchase it. That
Okay.
really curbed my shopping.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it?
I could not do the impulse shopping.
You can't do it. And when you pay cash, it's in your brain. When you just slap a card, like tap anymore, that's so easy. You don't think about it. But when you're handing over your hard-earned cash, there's something fundamentally different. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, go next time you go to the store, grocery store, whatever, just use cash and see, and you'll feel that pain in your gut of getting rid of your own money. It's amazing. And yeah, so some people, let's see. Yep, I haven't been following all the Slack, but Chris brings up a good point. Coffee expenses. That's significant. Like I said, the big three: housing, transportation, and food. Those are the biggest things. But yes, if you go to Starbucks every day, that's, you really need to. I mean, if that's all you care about, okay. But there's plenty of, there's a latte effect people have talked about. But that's an easy way, just like subscription, something that you could cut out or trim off and just use once in a while, and invest that money instead. Any other questions?
I have a comment.
Yep.
I think we use the Starbucks example the wrong way. When you try to deprive yourself, try to save it, you get upset about it, you get mad about it, and after a while it stops. So reward yourself for something that you really care.
Exactly, and that goes into like the first slide I started with, like, what do you value? And if it's coffee, if it's Starbucks, then okay, I'm not saying that. I was just taking what Chris's comment in the Slack. And I agree, Shama, it's about making lifestyle changes, and that'll be consistent. And that's where, and that's why it's much more, in my opinion, talking the big expenses that you want to cut than, just then doing something that's gonna make you unhappy. That's absolutely good. Great point, Shama.
It
Anything
is,
else?
you know,
Yep.
with things like that though, I realized, and because I actually, Starbucks was my thing, it still is my thing, and me and my husband, we did a little collection of how much we were spending on Starbucks, right?
Yep.
He was spending $55 a week in Starbucks. A week.
A week.
When you
Yep.
add it up, that like you stated earlier, when I went through when we went through because obviously my husband just, I don't, for the people who don't know, my husband just recently retired. So, in the interim of us transitioning out of the military on his behalf, like we decided, hey, let's just do a couple of, things so that we can know exactly where we're at financially. And that was one of the things that we were
Yep.
just like, oh my God, this is unbelievable. $55.
55. Yep. Go ahead.
And that was just for him a week. And
Yeah.
obviously for myself, it was like about 40. So that's like I said, it's almost $100 a week that you're spending on
Yep.
things that I can now say I could have used that money to splurge myself while I'm on travel or put it into my 401k because it adds
Yep.
up at the end of the year.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So $55 a week, that's $2,860 a year. That's half of what your IRA contributions. Absolutely, it does. It totally adds up. So great point. And like I said, you want to be able to splurge and treat yourself, but do you need to do it every day? So any other thoughts before we move on? Okay, avoiding significant debt. Like I said, I think too many people spend way too much on the house. There's, housing prices have gotten so crazy, but they are dropping now as it's just rates have went up. But if you can, the house hacking is the way to go. If you can, and I would recommend spending less than 25% of your gross income on housing. Spending too much on cars, like I said, I knew people that every day would trade it, and I did this an exercise with when I was in the Navy. Actually the driver for the Admiral, he was just talking about his new car and he just traded in, and I remember asking him, he's a young guy, he was an E5. It's kind of it's first part of being a non-commissioned officer, leadership role in the military. And I asked him how much he spent, how long he's had a car payment and how much he spends on average. And it was, 8 years, he's young, 8 years, $500 a month. And, I did the quick numbers on him. I'm like, okay, that's $6,000 a year by 8 years. That's 48,000, roughly 50,000. What do you own? And it like shocked him because he didn't own anything. He was, just starting a new, new loan for 5 years. And he was like, man, I'm never going to buy a new car again. I'm like, I'm not saying that. I go, but think about look at what you've spent and you don't own anything. So cars are a killer, especially Americans. Us in our cars, just north of getting from A to B. As you get older and you've saved and invested wisely, then splurge, get what you want, but don't ruin your retirement with a stupid car. Credit cards, of course, significant student loans. That's the other thing. Hopefully, people that are in the military don't have any student loans, but I know some that even have there as well. Like I said, spend lavishly on the things you truly value and ruthlessly cut where it doesn't matter. Any questions here?
Hey, Alan, I have a question.
Yep. Hey, Chanson.
Hey, how's it going? How do you feel about purchasing a vehicle versus leasing?
Okay, I'm not a fan of leasing in general because one, it's like a constant recurring payment. If you have your own business, that might be a different thing where you can lease a car, you know what I mean? Use it as an expense. But in general, no, I say buy, buy a nice Honda or something, a good car that'll last you a long time. And you can quickly pay that off and then drive it payment free for 8 to 10 years or so, and then Jansen, instead of having that lease payment of $300 a month or whatever, you're investing all that money to your future.
I agree. I just wanted.
Yeah,
to get-
absolutely. That's my opinion, and I'm pretty stickler on owning versus owning a car versus leasing. Any other thoughts?
One quick question on the credit
Yep.
cards.
Yeah.
So it says to pay off the entire balance every month. That's the statement balance, right? But
Yeah.
What if you're doing? What if you're carrying over? Like you pay off the statement balance, but like you still have like the amount of whatever you spent the current month. I'm assuming like it's encouraged to like always.
Well,
keep
you
it
pay off
near zero and stuff.
whatever your balance closed that month, because like say your statement closed today and you owe $2,000, and then I'm just making sure I understand your question.
Mhm.
The if you then buy say $1,000 worth before you then pay it, you still just pay the 2,000 because that's what your statement balance was, and you don't pay
Yeah.
any interest on that up 1,000 of extra spending that you just did after the statement closed. Does that make sense? You don't have to pay everything off. You pay the statement balance, that you don't pay any of that high interest. Makes sense?
Gotcha.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I was
I'm
just
not- Yep.
yeah, I was just worrying about like the how that impacts sort of I guess like the credit score and like future
And we'll
like when you're
talk
trying to
about
buy a house and
credit,
stuff.
but your credit usage is
Uh-huh.
don't let any bank or any silly person say that you need to keep a balance to improve your credit. That's lies, and that's totally wrong. What the worst thing you can do is one, not make the payments, but credit utilization is where that's what you want to keep low. So if your balance is say your credit limit is 10,000 and you're spending 10,000 each month, your credit's going to go down because you're too high. You want to be preferably 10% or less if you can on credit utilization. And one way you
Oh,
can
okay.
do that is if you have an expensive month, you can actually pay probably pay your credit card early before they actually see what, like before it closes and you have that overall determined credit utilization. Does that make sense?
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. And that's across accounts or
Yeah, across all
Okay.
accounts. So actually, the more credit cards you have, the larger credit, limit you have, your utilization should drop, assuming you're not using all those credit cards, which is actually good for your credit.
Okay, gotcha. Cool.
Okay.
Thanks.
Yep, you're welcome. Any other questions? Okay. Sorry, we move in. Okay, saving versus investing. Like I said, okay, first things, life insurance is not an investment. The cash value of whole life, we talked about this on the last discussion, but really don't believe their charts or anything. It's I'm a big believer for the vast majority of people, term versus vice permanent whole life insurance. We need it for protection, but if nobody depends on your money, you don't really need insurance. Time horizon, investing is long term. You should be thinking 15, 20 years plus down the road. Savings is short term. And then emergency fund, 3 to 6 months. It kind of depends on your family situation. If more than one people have a job that could drop your required emergency fund. As you're getting closer to retirement, that could go up. You want a larger cash bucket in case the market dips right after you retire. Any questions there? In the military, I hardly had any. I didn't have much of an emergency fund because I felt such a stable job, and reliable income. Go ahead. There's a question.
Yeah, I had a question for you, Alan. Do
Yep.
you do anything with that emergency fund, or is it just sitting in a savings account earning 0.00025%?
So I use a couple of things, Chris. I want to use a high yield savings account.
Okay.
And that's just for shorter term stuff. And yes, but it's high yield savings accounts are now at 3%, and better. I like Ally. It's got different buckets you can use for, say, you want to save for vacations, things like that. But yeah, there's the tough thing, Chris, is, that's why in the military I didn't have like an emergency fund, but because you feel like you're not making anything.
Mhm.
But there's the importance of liquidity, cannot be overstated.
Mhm.
You know, like when things happen, bad news is an extrovert. When the market dips, the housing crashes, all that stuff happens together. You know what I mean? And when you want, that's when you need liquidity and you wish you had it, even though it might not be. But when you think about it, you're talking only non-discretionary expenses. So, and you can build this up over time. You can actually even use your Roth IRA as a source of, I don't like to do this, but it is. You can pull out contributions if you needed to. For people, especially when they're very young, just starting to, like, I can't afford saving for emergency, saving in the Roth, 401k, all that stuff. You can save into the Roth, and then if you had an absolute emergency, you could pull out those contributions tax and penalty free. But not what that's a last ditch effort. You want that Roth money to grow.
Okay, thanks.
That answer your question?
Yes, thank you. That's great.
Like E-Trade has a 3.25% right now.
If you're playing with 0.2%, et cetera, don't waste your time. Okay, all the good ones have about the same, and so that's good. I like Ally because of the buckets. That makes it really easy, but don't go my point is, don't go bouncing around between different high yield savings accounts. They're all going to even out anyway. And 0.2, 0.25% on whatever, just that small amount of money isn't going to make a difference.
This is Lynn. I have a question.
Yes.
You said that you preferred the Roth IRA versus the other
Traditional. Yep.
Yeah, versus the traditional. Why do you?
Okay, first, yep. So one, Lynn, for people that the income limits have a deductible IRA, it's very low for people that have a 401k. So for single, it's only 68 to 78,000 income. If you make above that, you cannot make a deductible traditional IRA contribution. A Roth is what I call it's so flexible, that earnings grow tax-free forever. And it's only 6,000, 6,500 per year that you can put in, and there are income limits on Roth, but you can still backdoor it. But all that growth in earnings are tax-free down the road. Secondly, you do not have, it's the only qualified retirement account that does not require RMDs, required minimum distributions, meaning you can choose when you want to spend that money. You don't have to start pulling out a certain percentage the year you turn 72. And I'll show you here quickly, part of a bucket. You want pre-tax money, you want after-tax money, and tax-free money. So, pre-tax 401k, Roth IRA, and then a brokerage account, and if you can split those up, you'll have much more tax flexibility for forever in your life. Make sense?
Yes, thank you so much.
And Lynn, we go into that in the third discussion. We'll go way into that. Okay. I go into all the different retirement accounts, income limits, and all that kind of stuff. This is kind of more of a inch deep, mile wide of overall personal finance investing.
No, I appreciate it. It's very informative.
Excellent. Okay, quickly. Sorry, I know we're running late, but here's how do you invest for retirement? And I have a hierarchy of saving and investing, but take advantage of that 401k, get that free money. Health savings account, You have to have a high deductible plan. This isn't allowed for military retirees, FYI. But that's the triple tax advantage for a health savings account. It's amazing. Individual retirement account, traditional Roth. Lynn, like I said, I'm a big fan of the Roth because of the tax-free growth, and the flexibility of you being able to spend that money when you want, not being forced by the government to pull it out. And then there's taxable brokerage account. What, that's something I think of more for your long-term goals. And what if you retire early helps, I call this the tow truck because it helps pull you to retirement age when you can use the money out of your other qualified accounts. Qualified accounts meaning 401ks and IRAs. But those require basically in general you to be 59 and a half with some exceptions. I bonds, those are something I think of more of a good cash equivalent as you're getting closer to retirement. They're inflation protected and they're safe from interest rate risk, unlike other bonds. And then crypto's been getting crushed, but if you want to put a little bit in there, okay. Just don't do more than 5%, my opinion. Okay, here's my hierarchy of saving and investing. Got to have that $1,000 minimum. And really, I like Money Guy Show has a great talk on this too. They actually say you should be able to afford your deductibles. And then contribute enough to get your 401k match. For us, that's 10%. And then I say, actually, not push between pay off high interest debt. I was previously saying NESPP, but get that credit card. You got to get that paid off, and don't ever hold a balance again. Determine what your emergency fund needs are. What is it, 3-6 months or more, and start funding that. ESPP, like I said, this is Christian we were talking about. You can use that money every 6 months, and then you could sell it, get that gain, and then if you need use that money to fund your IRA or HSA, you can. And then hybrid accumulate wealth, taxable brokerage account, max your 401k, get into real estate, pay off those other low interest debts. Any questions there? Okay, and here's how do we go? So what are the next steps? I've got a net worth tool that's in that the website. You can just take and I've got some examples of how to use it, and you'll see a picture here real quick. But here's just my recommendations for how to get started if you haven't already done all these things. Brokerage account, you open that at the same place you open your IRA. Same place, Schwab, Fidelity, or Vanguard. You have all your accounts in one place. That's the best, in my opinion. And then the kind of example of what hey, I mostly get US total stock market, small cap value, etc. But just index funds and buy and hold, keep buying it, always be buying as much as you can. And then you'll, as GL Collins stated it, the best thing you could do is just keep buying. And then 40 years down the road, look at your account. You might need to sit down and have a doctor because you might have a heart attack with how much money you have. Okay, we talked about this too in a previous one, but this is a quick, hey, where am I at on net worth? Where should I be? And here's a good formula, that I liked it. They came from the Millionaire Next Door. And I like for people that are under 40, Money Guy came up with something else where you added in the denominator 10 years until your retirement, until you're 40. But you want to be a prodigious accumulator of wealth. So 2 times your age times your income divided by 10 is a good thumb rule of where you're at, whether you're on track. Here's a sample of, this is what I basically have in my net worth tracker. I like to do this quarterly. And I broke it out into all the different types from, just your cash, taxable investments, Roth retirement, so tax-free, traditional retirement. These aren't my numbers. I just threw some stuff in here. But then, and also your homes and your debt, etc. And like I said, this is available, this Excel file, and for free download. Okay, any questions? Okay, and if you do find these useful, if you could take a minute, I am working on my CFP, and we have to calculate a certain number of hours to get that, aside from passing, the tough exam. So people, actually, subscribing and commenting would be, would definitely help in adding that, showing that people are finding value in this. And then here's other topics. We'll go over the ones that I already crossed out. We'll be repeating these as I mentioned, in order. But here's some other ones. The next one is common investor biases based on voting. And any other, hopefully maybe you see some that you like there. But I put these in the Slack channel for voting for the next upcoming topic. Okay. Any other questions? Let's see the chat real quick. Okay. Okay, great. Okay. Well, thanks everyone. Any other, I'm going to stop sharing and pause. Any other
Sorry, I couldn't
last questions?
get to the
Go ahead.
unmute button. Yeah, that income calculator, was that gross income or net income?
But that was gross income.
Gross
For
income,
the
okay.
for the net worth you're talking about?
Yeah, the net worth.
Yeah, yep. And
Okay,
then
cool.
there's like I have that brief already on average 401k balance and net worth by age and income, and are you on track? That slide goes, that topic goes all into that in detail. But yeah, that's gross income.
Gotcha. Cool. Thank you.
Okay. Yep, you're welcome. Any other questions?
I got a quick one, Alan.
Yep.
Is there a such thing as holding on to a stock too long, assuming that it's not too volatile, like it's something that's pretty consistent? I know the minimum is, you said, is 5 to 7 years, right?
Yep. Well, and
Uh,
that's what you want. I mean, sometimes, you know what, like, you want to be able to hold on. You shouldn't plan on selling equities for at least 5 to 7 years. But what I'm saying is, the returns any day or year can be
yeah,
low, but over 15 years, it's always a positive return. You know what I mean? The stock market wins, and it will continue to, despite the current bear market, it
yeah,
will go up. If so long as you should be an optimist as an investor. They're the best. But do you think we'll continue to innovate, and businesses will continue to make money? I think so. But so there's not too long, and really, Jansen, though it depends on the company, and that's the tough thing about individual
yeah,
stocks is
right,
you never know. And I'll go into this. One of my topics is why I like index investing versus single stock, because you never know. And we'll go into this in the common investor biases, because a lot of times people anchor and then say that stock went down, and it's time to sell anyway, and it's for a loss, but people won't. They're like, oh, I'm just going to wait till it comes back to what it was, and it might never do that. So
yeah,
there is ability to hold on too long, and then a lot of times people also let the tax tail wag the investment dog, which is also what you don't want to do. You know what I mean? Like, if you make a lot of money on some stock, yeah, you're going to probably pay some taxes if it's in a brokerage account, but
yeah,
um, don't wait too long, and then that some disruption happens and that company drops, because every company at some point drops. You know what I mean?
yeah.
So did that answer your question?
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. Anybody else?
Yeah, you mentioned about veterans don't qualify for HSAs,
No,
but
I
that's
didn't
for,
say that.
you say
Retirees.
retirees. Okay, okay. So I was gonna
Yep.
say that's half
Yep.
truth.
Right. No, it was not veterans. Who was military retirees, because they have the TRICARE, healthcare for life. So. But yeah, the rest, the average veterans, nope, you can get the high deductible healthcare plan and max out that HSA in awesome retirement vehicle.
Awesome.
Cool. Any other questions? Sorry, we're running 15 minutes late, but appreciate everybody joining on all the input as well. Okay, well, I'm gonna stop sharing and recording. And